All right, recording has started, and this is the January 12th, 2023 Crossplane Community Meeting. Thanks everybody for turning out today to the first meeting of the new year. So we'll jump on into our latest milestone updates and then continue proceeding through the agenda. I will right now drop a link to the agenda document into the Zoom chat, so that everybody can hop on into that doc, and it's completely open right now for suggestions. So feel free, if you have a topic you want to bring up, to go ahead and add it to our community topics, or if you have a specific PR, you can add it there as well. But yeah, feel free to add things that you do want to talk about today into the agenda doc, and we'll get through it all. All right. So biggest topic here is v1.11. So a lot of really good things have been included into the release already. And so a lot of progress is continuing to go on there. I did want to talk with everybody here today about a proposal, though, to push the release back 1 to 2 weeks. So the reason I'm thinking about for doing that is that composition functions is by far like the most demanded feature, or one of the most strategic ones for the roadmap here that we'll be delivering in v1.11 in an alpha form. And so Nick Pope has been working quite hard on that. Spent a little time over the holidays as well. So that's in a pretty good shape to get that merged in. I think some of the reviews are being finalized and the code's getting to a pretty good shape. But I think that for what I believe to be a very important feature for the 1.11 release, I think it is important enough to make sure that it's included in the release first off, but then also that we get a little bit of bake time on it before we go ahead and ship 1.11 out the door. The original date for release is on Tuesday, so January 17th, but I would like to push that back at least 1 week, and I'll get Nick's opinion on this here in a second. But potentially 2 weeks which would make it January 31st. So somebody disappointed about that one? I heard an exacerbated sigh, but yeah. So are there any comments that folks want to add for this particular proposal here to give composition functions a bit more bake time?
I'll say something.
Sure. Yeah, Jason.
Hey, how are you? Happy New Year. I'm 100% for pushing it to whenever it makes sense for composition functions there. I think it's such a critical feature that I think I vote we wait for it and make it be part. That's just my take.
Awesome. That's great, Jason. Thanks for weighing in on that. Nick, do you want to share a quick opinion on like if a 1 or 2 week is more important from your opinion on like runway left for bake time and stuff?
Looks like Nick said 2 weeks in the chat.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I know you got some audio issues with construction in the house. Cool, sounds good. All right, so yeah, I think that something I think that's important here also is that the PR for composition functions is available for. I'm gonna go ahead and just put everybody on mute so we keep the conversation going here. So the PR for composition functions is available for folks to start trying it out as well. So as part of that bake time, being able to exercise it, take it for a test spin, and get some more feedback on it as well from the community will be an important part of improving the quality and driving some improvements there. So we will make some bigger announcements here about the release date, so that in the typical places like on the README and the community calendar, etc. Then that will be well known, so that we can make sure that the rest of the community is aware of when the release will be coming out. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the release board as well and get a couple more updates while we're at it. All right, so we talked about custom compositions, composition functions. Hassan, you walked us through in the last community meeting, observe-only resources, the design for that. Is there anything you want to add in terms of getting that design finalized in 1.11 timeframe?
Yeah, basically, I couldn't, focus on this for a while and wanted to give this some time, consider this time to get some feedback from the community. But now I can have some availability and I started focusing on that. So I will try my best to get the design merged in the 1.11 timeframe. But yeah, let's see. I cannot make any promises.
Yeah, and I think Hassan, with the 2 weeks additional time for 1.11, that gives a little bit more buffer as well.
Yeah.
Any big feedback coming in on that, Hassan? That that's influencing us to rethink things, or like anything major coming in?
Not really. Currently, I don't think any blocker or any big, comment that would affect like the overall direction of the design. For me, there are some details that we need to agree, and also I'm planning to make some experiments to better understand some concerns coming as feedbacks to the PR.
Cool. Sounds good, Hassan. Thanks for sharing that. And Jesse, I know that you had made a big push on the package signature validation PR, and I know that you're looking for a little bit more feedback on that as well. Anything you want to add along with that?
No, actually, Dan just reached out to me, and
did he?
Turns out he has a little bit of time, and so I appreciate that. Appreciate everyone else who's kind of like been helping me get this coalesced. There is just some cleanup to do to make it easier for others to digest, and then I hope to get more people's eyes on it. So if you do jump in there, please bear with me. I'm still trying to understand how best to contribute. There's a lot of boilerplate that's not really necessary to review. If you want to lend a hand, and you need help cutting through what my sprawl of boilerplate looks like, I'm happy to kind of like focus you where I actually made changes that are material. But if not, then just wait a few days, and hopefully with Dan's help, I'll get it cleaned up.
Yeah, and Dan is exactly who I was most interested in and know would have the greatest context to help out with a good review there. So, and I think you had asked about that recently, Jesse. So glad we've got Dan on that too. So that's great. And then I also wanted to check in with Pete, I think maybe for the latest status on moving the docs out to the docs repo and out of core Crossplane. Pete, can you give us a quick update where that's at?
So it was finished day before yesterday, this week. So the docs now live in the repo by themselves. Any docs contribution should go straight to there. And thanks to Nick for the hand there.
Sweet. And then is there a remaining effort then to remove the docs then completely from core Crossplane, so there's not kind of a two different places issue?
Yeah, I'll speak for Nick because I know he's trying to stay on mute. There's a PR there to do that. An issue is identified with generating meta something, Stan. I can't remember offhand.
Yeah, there's a few different things, the getting started configuration packages and the CRDs that don't actually get installed, right? The crossplane.yaml types. We were just generating those to the docs directory kind of because they needed to live somewhere. But Nick's taking the great step of removing the docs directory so it's not confusing. So we'll just shift those to be generated into like the cluster directory or something like that. And as long as we update the paths for the configuration workflows and stuff like that, then it should be a no op for any consumers.
And Dan, that's in a draft PR now, right? If I recall from seeing that yesterday.
Yep, that's correct.
Cool, great, perfect. All right, we'll talk about the fuzz testing in a little bit more here, and I think we'll talk about the CRD scaling stuff in a little bit more here in the community section. Dan, is there anything that you wanted to add on? Oh, no, I think this is maybe a little bit, this might not be the issue I was thinking of. I thought there'd been some updates around like, package manager concurrency and potential load that might be causing, but this one doesn't look like it's been updated recently.
Yeah, there was, I'm also trying to find this as we speak. If someone grabs it, it's a more recent one, I think references that one, where there's some really great investigation by some community folks. If you're on this call, feel free to jump in. But what I think is happening here is that folks are updating, and there is a cycle of the revision updating the parent package. So the provider revision updating the provider configuration revision configuration. And it's causing basically just dueling reconciliation loops, which is leading to that higher CPU usage. There was a great walkthrough of how they addressed this, basically by deleting an old invalid revision, and that addressed the problem. But we obviously need to drill down into exactly what's causing sort of that race condition there. And I don't have a full write-up yet, but I did look into this a little bit, and I'm hoping to, with that a little more breathing room for the release, the extra 2 weeks, I'm hoping to make sure that we have that fixed up for v1.11, and then also in a patch for v1.10.2, I think it is.
And Dan, so like from what we've seen so far, that appears to be a distinct issue from the general potential load from concurrency in the package manager that may be happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. There is, that's not to say that the package manager still can't, have pretty high usage when it's doing the installation. But the specific issue here is we're seeing it just constantly reconcile, which absolutely shouldn't be the case. In fact, in most cases, it should be on whatever the like global sync interval is for resources. Packages really shouldn't be reconciling that much because we anticipate that folks aren't modifying them directly. So this does appear to be a bug rather than just the kind of concurrent establishment of resources. I do think that it could have been exacerbated by the concurrent establishment of resources, which is why it may have been more noticeable for folks. But this one specifically is talking about like the amount of logs that's generating and CloudWatch and stuff like that. So it's definitely due to reconciliation.
Okay, cool, Dan. Thanks for confirming that. I went ahead and then added this issue here about increasing, that's the dueling reconciliation to the, here it is right there, to the releases, the roadmap board here, since you're going to be spending a couple of times in progress. All right. So yeah, so that's everything on the release board. Any other comments about v1.11 before we move along to providers and ecosystem?
So maybe just to mention the fact that environment config was reviewed and merged. Max made the most of the heavy lifting with the implementation, but we will have in the v1.11 the ability to patch from environment config CRD.
Yes, good call, Yuri. That's at the top here of the done column, and also a high profile, high demand feature that has been requested by a lot of folks. So definitely, yeah, it's got almost 30 thumbs up on that one. So yep, a great effort to Max to get that in 1.11, and then Yuri, thanks for all your reviews on it as well, man. All right. So let's move on to provider releases. There are a number of recent releases for the big three cloud provider, Upbound's official providers there, but there's links directly to the marketplace to check those out. Christopher Hart, is Christopher on the call today, by the way? I probably would have heard him if he was here. But Christopher did a release for the community provider AWS as well over the holidays. So that one's pretty fresh and new too. And Hassan, I think you did a couple releases as well for provider Kubernetes and provider Helm also. So a lot of fresh releases out there that are available. And anything big from those releases, especially the Kubernetes and Helm ones, Hassan, that's worth mentioning here?
Not really. Basically, the reason was it was 2 months from the last release, and if I'm not mistaken, there was a bug fix in the provider helm, which actually I think about some clients go updates that needs to be included in a release.
Got it. Okay. Cool. All right. So those are the recent releases for providers that I knew of, at least off the top of my head, and that were in the announcements channel. If folks want to call out now other releases of providers that they want to make known to the community and or add them into this list on the agenda doc, please do feel free, welcome to do so. All right. So that's everything for ecosystem releases. Let's move ahead now to the next section for some vendor updates. And Jean, do you want to share some things going on for your team, your engineering team at Upbound?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'll skip the first one, as Hans already kind of like mentioned, the observer-only resources design. We're continuing with the work on making external secret stores pluggable. Don't have anything yet to share for review, but hopefully in the near future we'll be able to do that. Nick's already mentioned status on composition functions. And the only new thing that we're starting to have a look at is the issue around validating compositions via webhook. So a while ago, we did a little bit of digging into some of the developer experience challenges, errors not being propagated and silent errors and so on. And it all really comes down to, typos or misconfiguration in compositions. And so we thought we want to have a look at this and think it would be valuable to really kind of like do that. So Philippe, who his handle is Fisco there, is a new team member. He joined us last week in my team, and he's starting to have a look at that. No concrete moves yet, but if anybody has some opinions in the community, please go and add it to that issue for us.
Awesome, that's exciting. So do you think, Jean, that that's something that we should then add to, is it already in the releases on the roadmap? Or we could go ahead and set that in the roadmap?
No,
there?
I think, we're still just at the point of exploring what the options are. I think once we settle on something, we can probably target it for 112. Depending on what the solution might be.
Yeah, and that could indicate that a good home for it right now on the roadmap board would be like in the design column as we're thinking through it, type of thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so feel free to add it there as you want, Jean. So Ed has a hard stop at 30 after. So let's go ahead and pull this up here real quick so we can talk about this issue here before Ed has to get on out of here. So yeah, Ed, floor is yours.
Thanks. By way of super brief introduction, I'm at Equinix in the developer relations group. I know that we put together a provider infrastructure for Crossplane. I want to say a year ago for some of it. It looks like 2 years ago for some others of it. There's actually two different ones. And I want to just get a quick read from the community on how much the underlying infrastructure might have changed over the time that the provider has not been updated, and understand like the delta to bring something up to date with the current release. There's also a delta potentially for us making changes to accommodate any changes to our APIs, which I don't expect you to have any sense for estimating. But just like if you have a provider that hasn't been touched for a year, how should you start over? Should you consult a change log that'll tell you what to do next? Or should you just turn it on and see what breaks and fix the things that break? And that's my quick take. I don't know that there's a quick answer to that, but I might just get some sense from the project of like how many and how frequent are breaking changes that have come up in the intervening relatively large amount of time, given that some of the other providers are at ODOT stage. And I'm assuming that ODOT stuff doesn't have necessarily stable things to work against.
Yeah, really good question. And I'll take a first stab at it, and then maybe folks can fill in some details or make some corrections as needed. So what I would anticipate, since Crossplane hit 1.0 a good while ago, I think that was like December of maybe 2019, 2020, so at least a couple years. So the API, the core API for Crossplane has been somewhat stable or fairly stable, right? We've been pretty cognizant as well of making things backwards compatible, not making big breaking API changes. So there's a chance that, at least from a runtime capacity, that if in a recent Crossplane cluster, installing this older provider that hasn't been touched could possibly work. There may be something broken out of it, but like from a general project standpoint, since we hit 1.0, we've been pretty good and having a focus on stability in our API since then. I think that a one thing to consider is that in terms of velocity, I don't think I would assume that this project, this provider that Marcus was writing was done by hand, right? Like manually writing the controllers and doing using Crossplane runtime. So there's a chance that it may be nice to start with a code generated provider instead, like just from a velocity perspective of wanting to get things out there quickly and get things moving quickly and have that velocity going into the future. That using like Upjet to generate a provider may be a nice start just from a velocity standpoint. But from a does this work standpoint, I'm more on the side of I'd hope we didn't break anything, or there's nothing obvious in my mind that would completely have broken it over the last year or so. Anybody else want to weigh in though and tell me I'm completely wrong?
I'd say if I can just add a little bit more before anyone weighs in. We have also been working towards automatically updated API code, so generated from the spec. Which should ease any problems in getting things started. So if it doesn't work based on our baseline, then there's probably other things we need to work on. Okay, that's great. That's a super +1 of like, yeah, you did it once. It shouldn't be that hard to make it work again.
Yeah, that's my assumption. Are you working with is Marcus still involved?
Yeah, Marcus is still there, and he's on my. We're both on adjacent teams. Let's put it that way. So
nice. Yeah, and then Marcus has a lot of context as well. He's a great guy, and and we love Marcus too. So let us know if there's anything crazy that comes up from that, or if there's other questions we can follow up. As you're making more progress and getting more real-time data into.
Yep, and if this piques anyone's interest, have them contact me, and we can identify resources that would help for this. So
very cool and awesome. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks.
All right.
And I'm going to drop now, not because I don't love you, but it's time to go.
Sounds good. All right. So some in the content section here, definitely some interesting things to talk about and promote. There's a the Linux Foundation is doing. Oh, sorry, Jesse has hands up. It looks like.
Yeah, no problem. I just want to chain it onto that real quick. Do we have metrics on providers anywhere? Like does the Upon marketplace, even if it's not surfaced, do you guys collect the number of installs or pulls?
Yeah, we definitely do have some metrics, and as we've kind of built it out and got the base functionality there in terms of documentation and that sort of thing, we're trying to move on to like, hey, what does the community find most valuable there? And I think metrics like polls, although everyone knows polls are somewhat of a lossy vector to judge something on, but things like polls, things like potentially GitHub, stats and that sort of thing, as well as like star counts and stuff like that, are all things that we think are going to be useful to indicate maturity of resources. You obviously can see the number of resource types or CRDs, right, that are present in there. But that is definitely something that's top of mind. So if folks have feedback on like, hey, I'd like to be able to see this to help me make better decisions when consuming providers, definitely bring that up. And yeah, we are very excited to hear that type of feedback.
Awesome. Yep, thanks for addressing that there, Dan, and sharing that information. All right, so back to the webinar here. So yeah, the Linux Foundation is sponsoring a webinar that I'm totally blanking on who's in it, who's presenting in it besides Yuri. So I'm sure there's other folks, and it's going to be very interesting material there. But yeah, Yuri, your name is the only one that came up immediately in my head because we talked about it yesterday. Maybe Victor as well.
Victor for sure, and
Sweet.
Matthias,
And
Nuno
Matthias.
from Millennium BCP.
Cool, awesome. Yep, so that's January 18th. I think that's a week from yesterday. So feel free to click that link and register for that webinar with the Linux Foundation if you are interested in checking out that stuff. I wrote a blog post that just got published at the beginning of the year here for the new stack that I thought was a pretty interesting topic. Because it kind of goes into a number of things that folks have difficulties with when they're first starting out with Crossplane. So there's some interesting material to maybe help, demystify a couple of the concepts, and then also give me some practical advice on, when you run into issues early on with Crossplane, how to deal with them. So check out that article in the new stack that I wrote. Ezgi got her blog post out about composition revisions have been promoted to V1 beta 1 and will be stable going forward as well. Super useful feature, and it's great to have that matured. So another big thing in V1.11. So another reason to be excited about that release. And Ezgi has a great blog post about it as well. And then a community member wrote an interesting blog post too about their opinions on how Crossplane is basically delivering GitOps experience for infrastructure. Any other content that folks want to add, go ahead and add it in as a suggestion so that if we get some more eyeballs on it there. So I want to give a fuzz testing update here. So the CNCF and AdaLogix have been helping out over the last number of months on doing fuzz testing for Crossplane. And so we're getting to a point where we want to wrap this up. And so there's a few things. There's going to be a report that gets published by the CNCF that captures all the testing that was done, the issues that were found, security disclosures, et cetera. So we'll make some progress on that soon. And also make sure that the fuzz testing is running on a continuous basis, along with new additions to Crossplane. And also make sure that all the bugs that were found, the handful of bugs that were found from fuzz testing get fixed as well. So, someone from the team will be following up on this in the near-ish future, but this is an important part of our security posture improvement and investment for the graduation of the project with the CNCF. All right, I also wrote an update here for everybody on CRD performance, CRD scaling stuff. So I just wanted to share that with the community as well, so that there's a bit more visibility on it. But essentially over the last, in number of months, there have been a whole bunch of investments and fixes into upstream Kubernetes to, make it more able to handle a large number of CRDs being installed. So performance improvements there. We were happy to hear from folks that if you're still having a experience of degraded performance, et cetera, hearing the specific environment details and resources available, et cetera, will be very useful. But so I wanted to kind of confirm for everybody that this is something that is important, right? We don't want to be in a situation where folks are having a tough time consuming Crossplane or even getting started with it, et cetera. So I wanted to confirm for folks that this is something that's important. And I want it to be solved in a complete way. So there will be some updates in the near future around what will be the roadmap approach to this to continue solving this in a complete and holistic way and in a general approach, so that all use cases are well covered there. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Confirmation that this is important. It should be prioritized. This is something that we want to invest in, right? And then also, we're going to do a shorter term investment too with the documentation and guidance that Pete will be driving to make sure that folks starting out can have a good sense of how to be successful with Crossplane given any sort of potential performance constraints. So a couple things that we'll be addressing in the near future and longer term. And thanks for everybody for bringing up this issue, and this is something that's important to us as well. All right. And anybody has any questions about anything as we're moving along, feel free to interject at any time. Dan, do you want to talk about this particular issue? You opened it here. You've got some good context about it. Do you want to go ahead and take this one, bud?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it plays pretty well off Jesse's question earlier. Really, we made a move a few months ago to push all of our community providers to the X package registry, and so that they'd show up and get that automatic documentation. Previously, we had the CRD's dev site, which gave a very gross view of documentation and kind of got the job done. But it definitely limited the functionality we could offer there. So it's been a great experience, I think, to move those over. We've been able to, add some of those maturity metrics and things like that, and still a lot more to do. We've also seen a lot of reliability. Obviously we're in the folks who work on the marketplace are also in Crossplane Slack, and have been able to help folks whenever they're having issues. And typically it hasn't had, any issues with uptime or anything like that. So we're really confident in the reliability there. We want to bring that same kind of set of features to Crossplane itself. So speaking to the issue earlier that Nick was tackling of moving out that docs directory and putting the CRDs somewhere else. The reason why we generate those CRDs is not because it's a Crossplane package, right? It's because we want some documentation on those. We also put the Crossplane CRDs in the Crossplane image, and those actually get installed by this initialization process when Crossplane starts up. So we actually already have the CRDs we need in the image. So we're able to do similar parsing of that we would for a provider configuration. So anyway, we'd like to standardize on this as the single place where you get all your Crossplane stuff and where we can add additional features for Crossplane. If anyone has any, thoughts about how this could make their experience consuming Crossplane easier, please feel free to drop it on there. There's some great comments already about, alternative registries that other CNCF projects use. And I think there's some good history with those. But we've also seen some benefits being able to get this kind of like extra metadata about things that are pushed.
Awesome, Dan. Thanks for sharing that and giving some of that background context as well. If folks want to make some comments on this issue here, this is available for comments and continue to discuss along there as well. All right, so that's that announcement there. Dan, looks like you had the next item on the agenda as well.
Yeah. So this is something that came up recently. I'm not sure if Philippe is on the call, but there were some CVEs reported in the Crossplane image. They ultimately shouldn't have too much of an impact, but we obviously want to get those fixed. And one of the things that came up is folks might be familiar with a couple of patch releases ago of Go. There was an issue in the net library and the standard library. And so there was, a strong desire to get up to our new Go versions there. The way that we currently set the Go version for our builds in Crossplane is using a really handy action called setup Go, which basically will download it and cache it and that sort of thing, which is really nice. We pin to a minor version there, which is helpful because we don't have to go through the toil, right, of going and updating for every new patch version that comes out. That should just kind of automatically happen. There is some information here about how often that's happening and how caching might be making that less frequent than we want. But the main thing that this causes issues with is if you actually run the same CI pipeline at the same commit at different points in time, it may come with a different build, right? You may be using a different Go version. For all other dependencies, we pin that version, whether it's like a base image or, tooling that's from the build subdirectory or something like that, which gives us that reproducibility. But here we don't have it. And so when we have something like, hey, we want to roll forward to a new Go patch version and make sure that happens, it's just kind of a difficult experience to make that, codified in the repository. So this is basically just proposing pinning to an actual specific patch version and updating those patch versions. It does definitely bring with the caveat, right, that that's more work for maintainers. However, there's some nice automation that we can do there to, make those PRs opened automatically so that we're not falling off there and relying on, humans to do these things. So anyway, it's open for comment. It's not something that is the most pressing thing ever, but it'd be really nice to get folks' feedback and thoughts there.
Awesome, Dan. Yeah, thanks for walking us through that one as well too. Yeah, so the ask here then is the comments on this issue and have some discussion there then too.
Yep, that would be great.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, next on the agenda is ignoring changes on parameters managed outside of Crossplane. So let me go ahead and open this up here. And I'm not sure who added it to the agenda, but if you're still here, go ahead and share some background on this for us.
Hi guys, that was me. I'm Lena. I'm from Guidewire on DeLorean's old team. Hi, DeLorean. So we've been looking at adopting the Upbound official AWS provider, and we're starting with a DynamoDB table. And we found that when we have auto scaling enabled, Crossplane just keeps resetting the read and write capacity, because I guess it's a limitation of the Terraform provider. Read and write capacity are at initial provisioning and also the capacity as it auto scales. So what we're looking for here, and somebody else actually requested this about a month ago, is something similar to Terraform's ignore changes, so that we can, if auto scaling is enabled, ignore changes on read and write capacity. So we'd be happy to make a contribution on this, but we're not sure if it's something that belongs in Crossplane or in the provider.
Yeah, good question,
Any thoughts on
Lena.
that?
Yeah, and so it looks like Hassan, you already had made a suggestion about this particular an experience or an API that might address this. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Looks like it was in Slack.
Yeah, basically there was Slack discussion on that, and it was mainly brought to me because I was interested in observe only, design, and this sounds like to be related at first look, because you want to, observe those resources after creation rather than managing it. But later, I realized that since we will need to use those parameters during the creation, this should be handled separately from the observe only design, which should be 100% read only by design. So basically I checked like how Terraform is handling this kind of situation, and there is a lifecycle hook named ignore changes, and I just thought that like Crossplane could have something similar, but I think we need to have this I believe at runtime level, so at least a one pager might be required before implementation, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense as a rallying point to kind of come together on what the implementation should be. So Lena, you mentioned that you were interested in driving it. Is that something that you and your team you'd be interested in taking on, like writing a proposal for how this should work or what level it should be implemented at in Crossplane? Is that something you're excited about, or how do you feel about that?
With some guidance, we would be happy to do that. We haven't actually made any contributions prior to this, so we'd be going in kind of blind.
Got it. And I think in general, Lena, that's something that as a community and within the ecosystem here, that we're supportive of providing some assistance and guidance around making progress for this sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, if this is and it looks like this does have some people do have some interest in it, like maybe maybe they could do it like in two phases here. One is that, you know, if other maintainers here on the call, if, you know, have some ideas about, you know, if this is, you know, a good fit, or if there's maybe some caveats that we would want to, you know, watch out for before making progress on this, you know, that's something good to call out sooner than later. And then otherwise, you know, if Lena, you and your team is interested in, you know, writing up a proposal for this, you know, to add probably to the Crossplane designs docs area, that probably is a good place to do that. And then we can kind of discuss that in the PR, and, you know, we can add some support and guidance for you to kind of steward that through the process.
Awesome. And where are those design docs?
I think like there's a design folder right here at the top level of the Crossplane repo.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. And then, so yeah, so thanks for your enthusiasm on that one, Lena. Definitely appreciate that. And then, yeah, another call to folks on the call here or watching the recording later. If, you know, there's some ideas about, you know, how to go about this, or some course corrections like we can immediately do up front early on, then that sounds like a great idea too. So feel free to add some comments directly into this issue, and that would inform any work that would be going on. Sweet. All right. Thanks, Lena.
Thank you.
All right, observe only resources related to AWS RAM resources. Anybody want to address this one here?
That's just a quick one for me. Sorry. Just as a note, and I guess as we go forward, the importance of observe only resources relating to RAM, which is Resource Access Manager from AWS, which is an emerging feature in Amazon where there's about 25 resources in Amazon that can be shared across into another account from like an enterprise. A very obvious example of that is VPCs and subnets, where there's a parent account or an account that controls the network, and then the network is actually shared into the application team's accounts, if you will, or whatever. I think we're going to see a lot more of using sharing. Where it creates some challenges where the current Crossplane behaviors are, it doesn't work at all. You can't adopt, you can't even, I don't believe you can even use the workaround in this case to try to use those resources, or at least be aware of them, to actually drop things in VPCs, or to interact with those other resources that you otherwise don't control from the control plane yourself. Maybe this is more of a design question for Hassan or whoever was working that design issue.
Yeah, yeah. To be honest, I cannot say I exactly get like how RAM, you know, like as far as I understand, RAM will be a dedicated resource. Like I want to share this, like where you say I want to share this VPC with this account, kind of like declarative resource that you create. And the relation with observe only starts when the, you know, other accounts wants to consume that VPC without managing it, correct?
Yes, exactly correct. So like if I have an account and somebody has shared something with me that I'm allowed to use and interact with, like in the case of a VPC, I would be able to drop EC2s into it or some resource into it, but I'd have to be able to be aware of it before I could do that. And that's where like having RAM, I'm happy to take this offline with you as that design goes further, and work with you on whatever I can do to help you in that regard.
Yeah, we can continue the discussion offline, and I can make sure that it's included in the design. Thanks.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, Jason. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, sweet. And then Diego, you had reached out about getting an update on this particular PR here. So I'll bring that up.
Yep.
Yeah, and let's see. Yeah, so I think that yeah, after the holidays here, that Nick had mentioned that this is something that we'll try to take a look at today here. I don't think there was any major blocking things that were still remaining on this one. So kind of a, you know, getting back from the holidays, shaking the rest off, and getting back to addressing or giving driving this one to a finalization. Did anyone else have any big concerns to bring up or anything beyond that?
Yeah, but basically, I'm Diego. Hi to everyone. The
Hey,
issue
Diego.
was I met this issue while I was trying to install Crossplane on OpenShift. That's one of the the distributions that is enforcing this policy. I think maybe it's the only one, because there is no issue with the most common cloud providers managed distributions. So I found this in OpenShift. And I was trying to understand if this issue can be handled by the next release, the 1.11 or not.
Yeah, and so that seems like a definite possibility. Yes, Diego, where this PR I think has gotten a couple of early rounds of feedback, and it looks like there's not any known big blockers on it. So yeah, hopefully this is something that we can get in either the rest of this week or early next week, and then that would be included in the beta 1.11.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Diego. Definitely appreciate it, man. And then, yeah, and if this may not be explicitly blocked on Nick, so if, other maintainers want to take a look at this, or other reviewers, if like Yuri or Hassan or somebody wants to also take a look at this to maybe expedite it potentially with other things on Nick's plate, that would always be appreciated as well. All right, and Jesse, you mentioned this PR earlier on when we were talking about the 1.11
Yeah, no
release
need to,
board, right?
no need to re-review. Thank you.
Cool. All righty. So I think that's everything that made it to the agenda doc. Did anybody have anything they wanted to bring up and discuss that wasn't included in the agenda? All right. Well, I know a couple folks in the chat were saying hi as well. So hey, Sean, good to see you, and Carlos as well. Good to see you at the community meetings this time. Definitely good to have more folks that we know joining in here too. And if there's nothing else, then we could go ahead and adjourn for this week, and we'll keep on with heads down on getting on the V1.11 release. I'll update all of the public locations that specify the release date, so we'll get a couple more weeks there, and we'll keep on pushing. All right, great to see everybody. Thanks for stopping by, folks.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.